So to that point, a not so much talked about, but very confusing portion of this story we spoke about this morning is Sergei Millian.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you do a breakdown for folks about him? Because I just want to listen.
I think Sergei Millian's story is central, and actually, I think it was intentionally confused by both the FBI and by Clinton operatives and the press. They intentionally made this story confusing, right? But let's go again to the IG report, where there's this alleged conversation between a figure, the FBI, and it appears the Inspector General is calling the primary subsource, referred to in FusionGPS literature as the collector. That's the person Steele is supposedly getting all of his stuff from, the collector or primary subsource. Under him are other subsources, including supposedly person one, who is that's the role that they fit Sergei Millian for, right? He's a source for the dossier. If you look at that alleged conversation between the primary subsource and person one, Sergei Millian, it's absurd, right? How does the primary subsource get all of his information from Sergei Millian? Oh, yeah, it's in a 15-minute phone call. He didn't identify himself, but I think it was him because I recognized the voice from a YouTube video I saw, right? It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
Why'd they target him? Why would they pick him of all people? How did he fit into all this that he was chosen to be targeted with that sort of nonsense?
He identified himself as a Trump supporter. There was an article in the Russian press in April 2016 where he came out as a Trump supporter, said, I like Donald Trump very much. I worked on a project in Florida, real estate, and I think he's a great guy, and I think he's really important. And it appears that that's when FusionGPS decided to put him into the middle of their operation. And we can ask the same thing about all of the people they targeted.
Yeah.
Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, except the difference with Sergei is, with his story, Mr. Millian's story, rather, excuse me, the difference with his story is it's actually the clearest example of what FusionGPS and the FBI did. It's actually astonishing once you look at it closely. I mean, Glenn Simpson brags about handing over Sergei Millian to ABC News. That's before the election. So before the election, Sergei Millian is framed and set up to be one of the many points of collusion between Trump and Russia. And his name appears in a couple of other publications, including Financial Times, the Daily Beast. So before the election, he's supposed to be one of their points of collusion. Then after the election, the FBI, again, this is the way to understand the IG report, the Russian disinformation stuff and everything. No later than January, the FBI has moved into massive cover-up mode, right? They continue to want to spy on the Trump team, now the White House, but they're in massive cover-up mode. Part of their cover-up is to start grabbing anything who looks like a source that they can say, oh, yeah, there was a real source. And they grab Sergei Millian, and his name is first in the Wall Street Journal. I believe it's January 24th piece, identifies him as a source. And then the Washington Post, I guess about a month and a half later, said, yeah, he's a source. He's an unwitting source, right? He didn't know he was a source, but he's really a source. So, I mean, all of these other people were set up too, but this is the one in which they're really bragging about setting him up. So it's a very upsetting story. And as I've said before, I mean, add his name to the list of people who've been targeted.
He denies
Page, Svetlana Lokova.
Yeah.
I mean,
So he obviously denies all of it. And I think that he is, I've tried to interact with him to get to the bottom of it. And he's just, I don't know that he knows who the heck anybody is he can trust anymore, to be quite honest. And I think that that's a lot of what goes into this. So people have a lot of questions about him, and he doesn't necessarily help himself because he doesn't react in the way you'd expect someone who's trying to get their story out there to react.
Yeah, different people. I mean, I get it, but different people have different approaches, right? Different people have different approaches. I mean, and if you've been targeted by these people, including the FBI, and this is one of the things that we know from the IG report, is the FBI investigated him. Why? I mean, it looks like what they did with Cleta Mitchell, too. Glenn Simpson gave his name to Bruce Orr. Bruce Orr turns around and goes to the FBI. We don't know. But of course, Sergei Millian has no detail on how they started an FBI investigation on him.
Yeah.
That's a story the FBI needs to tell.
Yeah.
Right? That's a story we need from the FBI. I mean, so this is how it works. That's how America was working at a certain point. Glenn Simpson goes to Bruce Orr. Bruce Orr goes to the FBI, and boom, you got an investigation on you. Cleta Mitchell's name is all over the press for some nonsense about the NRA and Alexander Torshin. And now Sergei Millian is under investigation because Glenn Simpson says he assesses that he's a Russian intelligence officer. I mean, what absolute nonsense. It's disgraceful.
It sure is.